What's going down, Gospel Diaries? Listen, I'm so excited. I'm in the Bay Area for the first time. Oh my God, I'm so excited. And I'm with this amazing vocalist, songsmith, all around great person. But more than anything, I'm so excited. I had a conversation with him earlier today, and he informed me that he's the writer. He Cannot Fail, recorded by Rodney Bryan and the Christian community singers. So that really touched my heart because that's one of my favorite songs. But before we get into our dialogue, would you please take a moment and subscribe because this is content from my heart to yours. Mr. Rusty, what's going on?
What's up, man? What's up,
I'm so
man?
happy to be here with you.
Likewise.
You St. Louis.
I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. Proud St. Louisan.
You're proud to be
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. That's my hometown.
What was it like growing up in St. Louis?
Man, growing up in St. Louis, I had such a rich culture that I really didn't know what was being invested in me until I was an adult before I realized the rich investment that had been made in me. I grew up in Baptist church, and our pastor came from a Church of God in Christ, who went to a Lutheran seminary. So I had a mix of everything. As a we were beating drums and playing tambourines in the Baptist church back in the '60s. But his name is Donald Hunter, and he is 89. He'll be 89 in October. He was dear friends with the likes of the O'Neill twins and James Cleveland and Albertina Walker and Maceo Woods and Clay Evans and all those people. And he really introduced me to the world of gospel music. And I went to the very first gospel music workshop in 1968. I was 10 years old. Wow. It was in London.
Okay, yeah, it was called King Solomon.
Yes. So I had a rich history of singing as a child. I was a voice soprano, and I sang with the O'Neill twins at Interfaith Choir. Then I wound up, as I began to be an adult, directing for them and doing some vocal production, and that led into me doing vocal work on the last 3 albums. And the last album that they recorded live, the 20th anniversary album with the Interfaith Choir live in St. Louis, I produced it. We were nominated for a Zelle. We didn't win, but we were nominated.
Wow.
And those kind of upbringing that I had with. So all those people in St. Louis that you interviewed, my dear friends Dell Thetford and Malcolm Speed, Zelle Jackson Price, and Marybeth Gentry, all of them I know personally.
Wow.
I've known them all since I was a child, and so I had that rich culture from them. So long before I came to California and met the Hawkins, it was rooted in St. Louis.
Now let's talk about your songwriting. You're a lyricist. About your first song. What was that?
I was 18.
18.
I was 18, and like most of my songs, I get them actually sitting in church. I'm inspired by sermons, and the Lord would drop a thought in my heart from a sermon that a preacher is preaching, and I begin to write. I don't play. I have what is called a Mozart complex, and Mozart was a classical composer, but most people who in that day and time, they wrote where they would hear the piano and they'd write out the piano score, then they write out the strings, and then they write out the woodwinds, then they would write out the horn section and everything. But when Mozart wrote, he heard the whole song in his head. So all he did was write down what he heard. And when God gives me a song, I hear the song in its entirety in my head. And so all I have to do is just sing what I hear.
This is an out-of-body experience.
Yes, it really is. But I didn't know that. But I never sat down and say, "Oh, I have a line, or I have a verse, or I have a chorus, or whatever." And then the people who I've collaborated with, they'll come to me and say, "Rusty, I got a song." Me and Daryl Coley, Reverend Daryl Coley, we did a song on his one of his last solo projects. It was live in Oakland, and he was staying with me while he was preparing, but then he had to go out of town to do a gig. And he said, "I want to leave this track with you." He said, he said, "The Lord told me that you have the lyrics to it." And I listened to it, I'm like, "Daryl, I ain't got no lyrics to the song. I know what you're talking about." Sure enough, he left, and I sat with it, and I sat down and listened to the song, and I just began to write what I heard. and that song is called His Love off his Live in Oakland album.
Wow.
Yeah. Friends from kids.
Right.
We grew up in the workshop together. When I met Daryl, I was 13, he was 15. Long before he became the gospel superstar that he was. A 15-year-old little mannish kid, and I was 13-year-old, as bad as a barrel of rattlesnakes, running around the workshop convention, getting in trouble.
Really?
And at that time, me, Quincy Fielding Jr., Daryl Coley, and James Moore were really the young adults of the children's choir of the convention, because they didn't have a children's choir.
Wow.
And we would get in trouble, and James would throw us out of the rehearsals. And we all called him Uncle James. That's how we were then. And all that came from me being in St. Louis. So, but as far as my songwriting, I wrote "You Just Cannot Fail" for Rodney Bryan. Then I wrote a song called "The Time Is Short" for T.G. Jakes Choir that was on the video, not on the album. I wrote "No Limit," the title song for Ricky Dillard. I wrote "His Love" for Daryl. Bishop Hawkins, pastor, his last solo project called "Song in My Heart." I wrote a song for him on that project called "Forgiving God," and a ton of songs on Edwin Hawkins Music and Arts seminar albums. Ton of songs. "Don't Look Back," "Whenever You're in Trouble," "Pressing," "Thou Art God." Yeah, a bunch of them. Yeah.
Let me take a moment here just to appreciate you and embrace you in my own strategic way.
Oh, God bless you.
This is amazing, man.
God bless you.
The thing about it is, it's like, to you or to a lot of people, they say, yeah, you wrote a song, you put some lyrics together. But look, if you wasn't obedient to the voice or obedient to the call in your life, that gift or that song, that inspiration would have lied dormant and possibly even went to the grave.
Yeah.
But you allowed that. You said, listen, I'm going to push through whatever it is that I'm going through, and you have inspired people. And I want to take that moment to tell you thank you.
Well, it's amazing that you say that, Eric, because I wrote a song for Love for Life 5, the last album that the Love Central Choir did, called "For My Good." And everybody calls it "Working It Out," but it's called "For My Good." And when I wrote that song, I was sitting in my windowsill. I was still living in St. Louis. That's how old the song is. And I had about $2 in my pocket.
Jesus.
And my bank account was overdrawn.
Okay.
And I told God, sitting in the window, I said, okay, if you don't work this out for me, it ain't gonna get worked out.
Come on.
And the Lord said to me, Rusty, why are you trying to figure it out? I've already worked it out. And that's where the song came from.
Okay.
And I began writing this song, not a dime in my pocket. And when the song was recorded, ironically, it became the #2 song on the album, and I got paid very well. Praise the Lord. Still getting paid for that song.
Good.
And so that is just I counted up. I really can't get heady about this. I make my boast in the Lord, really.
Yes.
Because He could have chosen to use anybody, but He chose me, and I'm grateful. I'm one of the ones that are grateful, and in God's sovereignty, He don't need us, but in His divine procreation, He knew before the beginning of time that you and I would be sitting right here doing this.
Oh, yes.
So I'm grateful.
Oh, yeah, and I'm grateful too. And on that note, we're going to take a quick musical intermission. We were blessed to have this vocalist right here with the maestro himself, Mr. Kevin Peabody, just moments ago. So we're going to play one of those clips, and we'll be right back. So don't you go nowhere.
Don't go.
Sticks closer than any brother. I recommend Jesus. Jesus. Let the church say yes. 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 Oh, yes. He made a way. He made a way. 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 Jesus made a way.
Welcome back to Gospel Diaries. Listen, I trust that you have really enjoyed that song. Thank you so much for it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I just a lot of people ask me about singing because I was a boy soprano and I had like a 5-octave range, and then I had a stroke in 2017, and it took my voice completely. And I could hear, I have perfect pitch, so I could hear the pitch, but I couldn't execute it. Like we would be singing the A flat, and my voice would settle somewhere around F sharp, which is a whole step lower. And and it was so frustrating. And then I came to a decision, like I need to participate in my own recovery. And I told God, whatever I'm left with, that's what I'm going to use. If I have to croak it out, the fact that I survived a stroke, you know, a black man surviving a stroke. And so I'm a walking, talking miracle. I don't have a slur in my speech. And I've got a good portion of a voice back. Now, I don't sound like I sounded on Love and Life 5, people, but I still am able to sing a little bit. So I'm just grateful that God still decides to use me even now, you know.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, what a testimony. But you know, right before our intermission, you were talking about you and James Moore and a few others being the youth of the convention of the GMWA. So in that vein, let's talk about the GMWA, some of the memories, some of the fondest memories that you hold dear to you today.
Well, most of them having to do with the founder. We call him Uncle James. Daryl and I and James and Quincy called him Uncle James, but Reverend Cleveland. A woman by the name of Lucille Lemon.
Yes.
She wrote a song called "If You Take a Step." We were in that rehearsal in Cleveland, 1974. Yes, and she was teaching, and you know, she was a curvaceous woman, and she had this big Afro wig on, and she was and she got this part of the song, "Hard Love Right," and every time she would pat her chest, talcum powder would come out.
Okay.
And so immediately, now we're teenagers, so everything is funny to us. So we started laughing. And so the last note, if you make one step, down, one step, which just like that. What happened to my glasses and what happened to her wig? And James, Quincy, and Daryl and I fell out laughing. We disturbed choir rehearsal, and James said, "Daryl, Quincy, James, get out of my tenor section and go home." And he said, "Rusty, you ain't done no business in the tenor section no more. You sing soprano." So he put us out of rehearsal. He put us out. And we left rehearsal laughing. And he asked Shirley Berkeley to go out and handle us. She's living to this day. She'll be 94 in August. Her name is Mother Shirley M.K. Berkeley from Washington, D.C. I'm going to see her this year. And she put us out. And he put us out. And she came out and she scolded us real good. She was like, "You all ought to be shaming yourself. That was so embarrassing." Then she said, "But the big lady's wig did fall off."
You know, we just need moments like that, moments of laughter.
And James always had that way about him, because when he put us out of rehearsal, he was laughing. He was laughing at us laughing. And then the same year, he was so frustrated with people coming to the convention being something other than they were supposed to be. You know, he had singers coming trying to preach, and preachers coming trying to sing, and a few brothers came in and decided they wanted to dress up as women or whatever. So he said, with rehearsal, he said, "I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, 'Neighbor,
Neighbor,
B was on your bag.'" And so we said, neighbor, Beavis on your badge. He said, say it again, neighbor, neighbor, Beavis on your badge. And so he said, if you left home if you left home Patrick, don't come here being Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
If you left home Geraldine, don't come here being Gerald.
Mm-hmm.
If you left home a preacher, don't come here singing. If you left home singing, don't come here preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Tell your neighbor, say, neighbor, Beavis on your badge.
Wow.
We thought that was the funniest
Yeah.
thing. But he said it out of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, and I have tons of memories like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was at every convention for the first 10 conventions.
Mm.
Yeah,
So you was at the first convention.
the very first convention.
Okay, so do you remember, was Harrison Johnson and the Los Angeles Community Choir, were they a part of that first convention?
They have been there, I just don't remember.
Okay.
I remember them coming in 1970 because I distinctly remember the men having green tuxedos and the women having these lime green to the floor chiffon gowns. They looked fabulous. And the big banana curls and Mary Wynn singing at the top of her register. And that's the same year that Helen Stevens and the Voices of Christ came to the convention, 1970.
Y'all had a hallelujah guitar.
My God. And I'm a Mesa Woods Christian Tabernacle fan.
Really?
Oh my God, big fan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm talking back in the Doris Sykes and Melvis Mothers and George Jordan and Albert Meadows and Pandora McComb and Pearl McComb.
Yes.
I'm a real fan.
Yes, you are.
And so, and Doris Sykes was such a lady. But when she got on stage, she turned into a Tasmanian devil. It was like, what is this? She came to St. Louis, and I know I'm supposed to be talking about something else, but she came to St. Louis and they sang the name of Jesus. And she was on the third row, on the end, on the third row. She came out, taking a little tiny steps, walking to the mic, and she saw the name of Jesus. And she got to that vamp. No, I love to call him Jesus. And she sang the song so that she took off her false eyelashes and put them in George Jordan's hand. No, put them in Reverend Wood's hand, and screamed she screamed us into derision. And when she got through, she took her lashes back and stood back on the third like nothing ever happened.
Really?
And we were going berserk, crazy. And that was the first time that I encountered Edwin Hawkins.
Wow.
I was 13-year-old boy soprano. And he doesn't remember that. He didn't remember that, but he remembered the first time I came to his conference. And he said to me, you have the voice of an angel. I said, thank you. And Elaine Kelly said, and you have the face of an angel. I said, thank you. And then Walter said, you're probably as bad as a barrel of rattlesnakes, aren't you? And I said, I'm not a bad boy. He said, see.
How old were you saying?
13.
Wow.
About 13. And then when I finally met Edwin, the seminar started in 79 here in San Francisco. And then it was 3 years later that they actually had the inaugural seminar in Atlanta. I went to Atlanta in 83, I believe. And then I didn't come back until 86 when it was in Houston.
Okay.
I walk onto an elevator and there stands Edwin, Richard, and his then manager, James Nance, from Connecticut. And he didn't say, hi, I'm Edwin Hawkins. He didn't say none of that. He looked at me and said, what a beautiful jacket you have on. Edwin was a real fashion victim. And I said, thank you. He said, who's it by? I said, Calvin Klein. He said, where'd you get it? I said, at Neiman's. He said, oh, you shop at Neiman's? I said, yeah. He said, you got it here in Houston? I said, no, I got it in St. Louis. He looked at me and said, what are you doing in St. Louis? I said, I live there. He said, you live in St. Louis? I said, yes. He said, there's a Neiman's in St. Louis? I said, what do you think St. Louis is, a country town? So anyway, that's how Edwin and I met.
Wow.
It was a couple of years later before he even knew I sang. The first thing that happened, he asked me to be part of the fashion department. So I wound up teaching the fashion class for the first 3 or 4 years.
Of the
seminar. Because the music and art seminar. So they did music and they did arts. They did drama, fashion, spoken word, poetry, dance. And it was in the Edwin Hawkins Music and Arts Seminar that praise dancing was created.
Wow.
It didn't start at church, it started at his convention.
And now my mind goes to the song, I love you, Lord, today. Edwin Hawkins. A lot of people don't know that's a seminar.
That's a seminar song. Written by a young man.
He's still alive.
Yeah, his name is William Hubbard in D.C.
Yeah.
Hey, William. And
I would like to interview you.
Yes, I'll call you.
Go ahead.
But and he wrote that, and when he first started, the choir didn't really, like it.
Really?
Mm-mm.
That is a
They, were,
standard.
they didn't like it. And then Edwin, kind of cleaned up some things. And when he did it in the rehearsal before the recording, when he did it in that rehearsal, it was a blowout.
Wow.
The anointing fell so heavily on that
Jesus.
song, we couldn't pull ourselves together.
Wow.
Yes, and so that was my interest into the seminar, because actually I met Edwin before I met Walter, and so.
Let me ask you this, because now when you hear this song, "I Love You, Lord," today, do it take your mind back to the recording?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
Oh yes.
Okay.
When I hear anything that we've recorded, it takes me right back to that song.
Okay.
And some songs will take me back, not necessarily to the recording, but to a performance we did.
Wow. Yeah, because some performances are more memorable than the actual recording.
Yes.
So, but we're going to take another musical intermission. We'll be right back. We have to talk about you with Love Alive.
Okay.
And we must talk about that phenomenal song, because I'm going to be plugging the daylight out of that song, because I want you to know it don't matter what you're going through. Jesus, Pookie down the street or Dublin them, they may feel you, but I promise you, and we got to talk about where those lyrics came from too.
Okay.
Jesus will never fail you. We'll be right back.
What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. discouraged. Just take it to the Lord in prayer. Oh, what peace we often find.
absolutely beautiful.
Bless you. Bless you.
So, those Love Alive albums have become standards, they're classics, and I'm sitting next to someone that actually partake in those recordings. Now, which recording were you involved in?
Love Alive 5.
5.
Yeah.
That was the last one.
That's the last one.
That's the one, Nick of Time, so many other things.
Nick of Time,
Wonderful.
For My Good.
No, not wonderful. Not marvelous. Thankful.
And Marvelous.
Yeah,
Marvelous.
That's a double disc one, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, we did that right here at the Paramount Theater.
Really?
In 2 nights. We did it Friday and Saturday night, the same concert both nights.
First of all, let's talk about Sam Franklin.
Yes.
That Nick of Time. She tells the story often. She said when Walter gave her the song, she said she didn't like it. But that song has become one of her most requested songs.
And not only that, it was a duet originally.
Really?
It was supposed to be her and another young lady named Laverne. And Laverne backed out. It was like Sam sang the song by herself.
Mm-hmm.
It became very good for her, and that's probably the most requested songs that she's asked to sing.
I get chills when you can tell on the video that the spirit came in. I've never attended a Love Alive, and you have, so you witnessed the spirit, but I only witnessed through the video and through. What a powerful feeling!
Yeah.
Wow.
Pastor didn't like rehearsing a lot. He liked the rehearsals to be productive, but he didn't like 3 and 4 hour rehearsal.
Okay.
He wasn't for that at all, and neither am I, because it becomes counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
You can only consume so much. And so we recorded a church anniversary weekend, so it was October 21st of 97, and it came out in 98, and we started rehearsing in August.
Of 97.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So we had 2 months.
And you all was able to execute it. That's pretty cool.
Tony Timmons, who's an incredible singer and songwriter, he wrote a song called Cry On, and it was a solo. And he played, I said, you should submit this song to Pastor for Love Life 5. He said, I was just thinking that, but it's a solo. I said, maybe I'll have a choir arrangement. He said, I don't have no choir parts. I said, well, let's put some choir parts together. And so we sat down and started writing the vocal arrangement.
Really?
So when I talked to Pastor, we came to Pastor said to me, then you're going to have to direct it on the album. I said, okay, because I don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but ironically, when I joined Love Center, I joined Love Center in 88. I finally moved here in 94. And I was here 2 weeks, and Pastor made me director of Love Center Choir. So to this date, I am the longest running minister of music in the history of the church.
Wow.
We had Daryl Coley, Edwin, Lynette, my sweetie, and Pat Gill, and E. Marcus Harper.
Wow.
And it wasn't until Richard Smallwood said to me, while we were praying for pastor's homegoing, he said, while we were doing our big talking last night, you're the only one in this room that Walter trusted in front of his choir.
Wow.
At that time, his last 15 years. So it was quite an honor, because I was living in St. Louis. All I did was go to every concert that the family and Edwin Hawkins singers came to St. Louis to do. But that Love Alive 5 project is full of gems.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now there's a video on YouTube. It reads in the caption that this was the final performance of a particular song of Bishop Walter Hawkins, and there you were, right? If I'm not mistaken, to the right of him. You know what I'm talking about? What was the name of that song?
It was marvelous.
I'm gonna play the video so you all can see that. But I want to kind of touch on that moment, because you could tell his body was declining.
Yeah.
His health was declining, but he still gave it his all.
And he had all of his voice until the very end. Yeah, it's kind of surreal. I'm in Oakland, California today because of Walter Hawkins' obedience. He told me in the year I joined Love Center, '88, That was the year that he started the Love Fellowship Conference, and their inaugural session was in St. Louis. And he said to me, "So Rusty, where you from?" I'm like, "I'm from here." He said, "Where were you born?" I said, "Here in St. Louis." He said, "You from here?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You don't fit in here." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "You," he said, "what is in you is a bit bigger." He said, "I don't mean this, no disrespect to St. Louis." He said, "But the people here are not going to really appreciate what God has done in you until you have left to come back." I'm like, "That's not good news to me." So he said, "You need to be in Oakland, and you need to be at Love Center, because we have what you need." He said, "But more importantly, you have what we need." I'm like, "Walter?" Because he wasn't my pastor yet. We were on first name basis. I said, "You Walter Hawkins?" He said, "Boy, I know that." I said, I don't have a thing that you need." Fill in the blank. And he started laughing. He said, "You may not see it now, but you're going to see it. One day you're going to see you have just what we need." And the month before I moved out here, he called me and told me, "If you let this season pass without moving here, you're going to miss what God has for you."
Wow.
He's
Direct.
very direct. So I moved. And I moved with pastor. I lived with my pastor for the first 6 months I've lived here.
Wow.
And I mean, rent free. I mean, he was like, "Come stay with me till you get on your feet. I know this is where you're supposed to be." He was so convicted in that, so I did. The song is entitled "He Just Cannot Fail." And I'm trying to think well, I wrote the song listening to a sermon, and the sermon was titled "God Cannot Fail." I'm sorry, that's not the sermon. The sermon titled "What is the One Thing God Can't Do?" And of course, the answer was He just cannot fail. And so I began to write, awesome are His wonder, and marvelous describes Him too. And so going, He's a God of mighty splendor, but there's one thing He just cannot do. And the chorus is He just cannot fail. God just cannot fail. Out of all the things that God can do, He just cannot fail. And Rodney I think he heard my church choir sing, because Indianapolis is not far from St. Louis.
Right.
And he asked me, he said, has anyone recorded it? I said, no. He said, "Well, can you send it to me?" I said, "Sure, if you want me to." And I said, "But if I give it to you, that girl has to lead it."
Yes.
He said, "What girl?" I said, "That girl, you know that girl. I can know her name. I know her name right now. But the girl with that voice." I said, "She has got to lead it." He said, "Okay, I'm gonna give it to her." And so I thought he was playing. And so he asked me would I come to Indianapolis to teach it. I said, "Sure." So I got on the plane and went to Indianapolis, taught the song, came back home, and then it came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Was you pleased when you heard the finished product?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was pleased.
Wow.
I was pleased to tears, because she ministers the song.
Yes, she does.
And when I heard them sing it live, I was like a fat Baptist woman. I was just overwhelmed. But yeah, that's how the song came.
Wow.
And yeah, that's it.
Well, listen, Gospel Diaries. There's two songs that I want you to blow up. I want you to blow up this EP. Rusty Watson. He has an EP that came out in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. What were the two songs on that?
The song called "God," and a version of "Great Is Our Faithfulness" called "Morning by Morning."
So listen, I need you to go to Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or whatever the case may be, whatever platform, and I want you to just put this song on replay. And not only is that the only song that I want you to put on replay, I want you to put Rodney Bryan, "He Just Cannot Fail." And on that note, you got anything else to say?
No, but thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Like I always say, love on someone, and I promise you that you will save a life. You never know, that smile that you wear just may be the ingredient that makes somebody put that gun down and say, "I can live another day." Be kind, be courteous, and we'll see you later. Bye.